My name is Steven from Naptip. I'll be talking about sheltering and best practices, yes. I'll be mentioning differences between sheltering and a shelter and a home, all right, as well as shelter management. Okay. Does anyone know the difference between a shelter and a home? Any idea?
Yes.
Shelter is like a temporal place where you can stay over a period of time. But a home is somewhere you stay like permanent residence, somewhere you stay for a longer period of time. Or a place you can call yours.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else?
In home, you have family members, parents are there, siblings are there. Then in shelter, it's like you are there with other people from different places. You don't know them actually.
Thank you very much. The word I was actually looking for, you've used it. Permanent, temporary. That's the difference between a shelter and a home. The next slide. Well, let's just run through while technicalities are sorting themselves out. Now, sheltering, like she said, is like a safe space. A shelter is a safe space for you to reside or accommodate for a short period of time or a period of time. A home, running a home is more or less a permanent residence for anyone and for whatever reason. Now, the differences between the shelter and the home also include, okay, let's run through this. All right. A shelter is a safe and, let me just do that. A safe and secure accommodation in which victims are protected from physical, social, and emotional harm or threat of harm to themselves. Now, we know that we've talked about PTSD this morning and other situations that victims find themselves, and we find that even stigmatization encourages such situations when they are in our care. When you have people in formal care that are further stigmatized or exposed to some situations that are not helpful, they tend to withdraw back. And one of the ways they deal with it is like the good doctors here said, they slash themselves, they hurt themselves, they pick up quarrels with other residents, just anything to just let out that steam. But if you manage your shelter effectively, and we'll see when we run down one of the ways or some of the ways you can do this. No two shelters are the same. The reasons are this: your purpose, your exposure, your training, your staff strength, the skill set, everything contributes to what you want to achieve and how you achieve them. So if you have to run a shelter, it takes a lot of planning, it takes a lot of budgeting, yes. You even need to get the right licensing to run a shelter or your home, as the case may be. Now we're going to look at the types and forms of shelters. The differences between the types and the form is that we have the emergency care shelter, which if we had NEMA here, or the State Emergency Management Agency, they will have a clearer, they will give you a clearer understanding of what an emergency shelter is. I recall 2018, January, when we went to Port Harcourt to get some returnees back. The accommodation that was provided for the officers from other organizations wasn't sufficient. So we had to make we were residing in a makeshift accommodation. I was actually living in a tent for about 2 months on the field. Madam, I'm sure you are aware. Ms. Olubeson and the likes. Because they are seniors, we give them real residence accommodations. The rest of us were living on the tents, crumb beds and, the rest of us. Not as if we were complaining, but the fact was that there was just no space. Sometimes you don't have a choice, but to just cramp up somewhere. Like Doctor was saying, the lady who had her bags thrown out just had to manage somewhere, maybe under the stairs or something. The thing is this, we made it our home. We went to town, we bought extension cables, put lightings, mattress and stuff. It never affected our jobs. Why? Because we were trained for these things. Not everybody is trained for that. Not everyone who goes on the route to Libya is trained to accommodate whatever it is that is coming to them. So there's this shock when they get into the road or when they get into the shelter, and the kind of personnel that work there are not supportive. So it becomes counterproductive. Instead of assisting them, you begin to bash them back into their shells. And we need to look into this and find a way to sort things out. Emergency shelter. When you have an emergency situation, like maybe flood, fire, pandemic, just that we don't know where to go to when we have COVID-19, stay in your house. That's your own emergency shelter. Transition shelter. For those who maybe might be in transit, like someone said, you were traveling to Lagos, the car broke down, you got there late. Maybe you have to pass the night along the way, a hotel, a guest house, that might be your transit shelter. Short-term shelter. These are the types that give short-term accommodation it could be for victims of human trafficking, it could be for health reasons, it could be for people in transit like that, but a short period of stay. The fourth one is the long-term shelter. Now, this is the one I want to actually focus on. It allows stays usually 3 months or more. For those who run shelters here in Benin, or generally, it's not so common. It's not so common. What you have are just short stays and then they push out, short stays and then they push out. The long-term stay is to achieve something very definite. And I want to appreciate PKI. You're doing a great job at this. Thank you very much. I want to appreciate Freedom Foundation. They're also doing something similar. They actually trained for about a year before empowerment in Lagos. And we have other people like that. Kosudo is doing wonderfully well. They've trained some people for us. Sorry if I don't mention everybody, but I know that this is very, very tasking, capital intensive. And if you don't have the right set of personnel, I keep hammering on that because we take it with levity. Honestly, some of these tantrums that they throw in the shelter, fightings and everything, is because they don't get the best of care and attention. Some can be naturally very, very disturbing. We have someone in the shelter. My people know. If the commander comes in, she's fine. Once the commander goes out, she's a totally different person. In fact, there was a point someone reported something to me and said, she will wait until I come back before she can actually get something done. Everybody down to the nurse, the matron, the cook, were trying to pacify her. No, she will wait for daddy to come back. So it's not as if they don't know what to do. She just wants to have that person of authority on her side so that I can wash the rest of them. But she didn't get that. Okay, What were you asked to do? This. Why don't you want to do it? No particular reason. It's just one of those times, maybe she just goes off. This is someone who is asthmatic. What does she do for fun? Eh? She'll have plastic bottles lined up in the freezer. And when you're not looking, she'll just go to somewhere safe and be doing what? Munching ice block. An asthmatic patient. The nurse will talk to her about it. I've spoken to her about it. The commander, yes. But when she goes to that corner and start hearing crack, 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 crack. In fact, someone picked one of the bottles and threw it on the roof because if you leave it lying around, she go pick it, fill it up again, and start munching ice block. We'll get to the point where you see how to manage these people. Manage your own staff too, because you are not allowed to beat these people. You don't beat them. You shout on them, they cry. And then because we are paramilitary, you know you get into trouble easily. On Christmas Day, a colleague was in cell. Yes. So maybe for NGOs it's easier, but for us who are practicing social work or counseling in the paramilitary, it's even more difficult. You are given instruction, you must carry it out. So if you don't understand when you tell someone, do this, and they don't do it. It's funny. But we see it every day, and we are not allowed to shout on them, beat them. All you can just do is, okay, let me take the bottle away from you. But for how long? You will close and go home now, Shay. Mm-hmm. You know, demands that are very funny, but you must find a way to pacify her. And funny enough, she's the only one in the shelter at this time, giving all this wahala. Everybody's at work because of this person, but we just have to manage her. Okay? All right. So we're going to the forms of shelter. In Naptip, run a closed shelter. We have open shelters and closed shelters. Open shelters are the ones where you find people, residents can come in and go out freely, like go purchase anything or go to their place of work or where they learn a skill, come back, maybe at a stipulated time. I know Pathfinder does that. I know Kosudo does that. Freedom Foundation does that. At Naptip, you are under protective custody. You don't go out. We run a closed shelter. Now that's also, to some level, counterproductive. But it takes time. We have to explain to them why they are there and why they don't go out. If they must go out, they go out accompanied. They can't go out unchaperoned. The reason is this. We spoke about reprisal attacks yesterday. We spoke about reprisal attacks majorly. And these people, we had an incident back in Lagos, 2007, 2008. A victim was actually poisoned in the shelter because someone came in under false pretense, claiming to be who he was not, brought some items for the victim, was checked, but was laced with some substance. The victim consumed those items and took ill. We had her treated, and that informed our visitation procedure. In fact, there's no visit to the shelter. If there's going to be a visit, it will be conducted at the main office in the presence of officers. Okay? So, this has opened our eyes. The evidence, like it was stated yesterday here, when Barrister Eze was speaking, when you want to give evidence in court, if it's a drug case, it's the drug that is the exhibit that's presented. It's inanimate. It can't defend himself. But when it's a person, then there's a problem. Now, this person, you find that it's either they eliminate the evidence, which is the person. That's the only way to kill the case. I've taken the victim to court in Abeokuta, and a colleague of mine, two colleagues of mine, went together with the victim to Abeokuta, not knowing that the brother to the suspect had taken our license plate number, radioed his colleagues. He's a mobile police officer. Radioed his colleagues ahead, mounting a roadblock, and they opened fire on us when we were going back. We drove through the bush and busted out somewhere at Ofada to find our way back to Lagos. It happens. Protection is the purpose of sheltering. And for Naptip, we run 9 shelters nationwide, and we're hoping to run more. And all these shelters run on this principle. They are usually located at places where you wouldn't suspect. A home can be within town, regular household and stuff, but an actual shelter should be kind of away from public eye, so that you won't have easy access. In fact, if you go there, they will ask you, what do you define here? Our shelter here, if you are coming from the main office, we need to know you are coming. The reason you are coming, when and with whom. You're coming in, even as a Naptip staff, you document at the access control point before you go in. Because if you come in, now let's just, anything can happen. You can be used, to pass things in or bring things out. We'll get to that point. Shelters, okay. We're there already. Okay, let me focus on this. I think we are good with the shelter. The home is usually for those who have issues, especially health issues. They are usually terminally ill. So it's just to assist them with the transition, so to speak. Okay, let's hurry up then. All right. I think that's just the major difference. The shelter is for a brief stay. In Naptip is no more than 6 weeks. It can be extended for reasons. I've taken a girl to school for about a whole term because she had reasons to stay for security reasons. She has to go out with armed men and stuff to school. So she was feeling like a lord. Let's move, please. All right. There are rights and obligations. The right of the victim to the shelter and the obligations. I wouldn't want to run through everything because it's voluminous. But the thing is that they have rights that should not be underrated, should not be violated, and they have obligations to the shelter as well. We have them printed out and hung in a conspicuous place. So as you're coming in, reception is part of the thing that we arrange that is very, very, has to be warm. Technically, whoever is on duty when a victim comes in knows what to do, what to document, what to say. This is your room. This is breakfast time, lunch time, dinner time. If there are other things that you want to know, you may ask. The matron is here. That's the sick day if you want to see the nurse. Things like that. So if they have other things, in fact, there is, a suggestion box or a complaint box. If they have complaints, they have the right to jot down what they want to complain about and drop it. And to make matters worse, well, not worse, let me say secure, is the zonal commander that has the key to the complaint box. So the staff cannot, check what is in there. So whenever she comes, she can open the box. If there's any complaint, she takes it up with whoever the matter affects. It comes to me first anyway. So let's go to the next one, please. Yeah, documentation. We We know that in counseling or social work, it was never recorded, it never happened. If you don't have records of anything, you don't know about it. It is deniable. That's the language we use, paramilitary. It is deniable, and you are safe. So these are some of the documents we use for intake. I didn't want to put a particular one here because I see that a lot of people don't get to use it, but it is necessary. It's called the consent form. The person must give consent to stay at the shelter. It is not by force to stay at the shelter. I don't want, in fact, in our shelter matrix register, you will see some victims' names with, in bracket, not sheltered. We have their details. They came to the office, we took their details. The matter might be ongoing, even in court or anything, but they might not be sheltered for their own reasons. But if in the interest of the person, particularly a minor, protection has to be provided, we explain to the wards or whoever refers the person to us, this is the reason we have to take this child in. And if it's an adult, well, he or she is free to take that decision. So consent form, apart from others, is very important. The other one I want to make use of is the referral form, G. Has anyone seen any referral form? A copy of the referral form? I know that in the file jackets we have this structure for the NRM, the National Referral Mechanism. Naptip is the custodian of that referral mechanism. If you don't have the referral register containing the referral forms, it's better you make requests so that you can get it. It helps us to monitor how persons are referred around the mechanism to get services or support. Other forms are very, very important as well. Even the exit questionnaire. Now, the exit plan contains what will be done after the person leaves the shelter. That's after reunion. What were your experiences? What are your opinions for improvement? Okay? Because while in the shelter, there are things you will have cited that you don't like. There are things that you have loved, you want to commend us about, would like to know. So it's a kind of feedback process, filling out this exit form. Next slide, please. Okay, management. This is just a little way to encourage ourselves or prepare ourselves on how to manage these facilities. We know that if you run a shelter, everybody knows it's capital intensive, but bulk of the work starts with the planning. Planning, what exactly are you sheltering people for? Are you sheltering returnees? Are you sheltering trafficked persons? Are you sheltering sick people? Are you sheltering people who are displaced? That will inform the kind of operations you want to carry out. Now, funding. How do you hope to raise money to run this place? You have to consider feeding, healthcare, shelter, even the activities they'll be involved in. You have to buy things like Ludo, computer games, your subscription for GoTV, outings, a standby vehicle driver. Do you have retainership with the hospital in case of anything? Everything goes into funding, planning, and what have you. Then staff coordination. You cannot overemphasize this because if your workforce is not skilled enough or you don't have enough hands, then there's a problem. You find that even amongst your staff, these victims pick people that they like or choose to relate with. We've had matters where a victim will walk up onto you and said, I don't like my counselor. I want to change. Many a times, and you ask, why? I have a male counselor here whom someone actually referred. I want to speak with that man. But we are gender sensitive. Your counselor is expected to be a female. No, I don't like that auntie. For what reason? Does she shout at you? Does she? No. But she feels this person listens better. They went back to their room and they were there discussing. This man was asking me this about my brother, about my mother. This other person was just probably asking questions on the phone. You get not going outside the box. So it's difficult for this person was like, I would have preferred this. And she actually came up with that. I want to change my counselor. I'm like, for whatever reasons, fine. Let's do this. And we got the desired results. Thankfully, he understood. There are boundaries, like you said. There have to be boundaries. We have to use the 2 adults rule. Does anyone know the 2 adults rule? Anyone? The 2 adults rule is simple. If a male counselor is interviewing a female victim, there has to be a female adult present. Well, if it has to be a male victim, I don't think there's much threat, is there? But we apply it anyway. Because assault goes both ways. Someone mentioned yesterday that a lady was being sexually abused and she was equally abusing her younger brother. We've seen that as well. So we always apply the 2 adults rule. And then when we have problems, we go into what we call case conferencing, where counselors will sit and discuss some of these matters. Confidentiality especially is taken seriously, but we have to discuss some matters that are pending that are difficult for a particular counselor to handle. And in those meetings, you might find that we need to refer. Is that you change the counselor or you refer to an organization that is specialized to offer those services required by those victims. So counseling, sheltering generally ensures the protection of trafficked persons in gaining their self-esteem, okay, and develop them for future challenges, how to face them, how to combat them, while management only talks about the running of the structure, the facility itself. Next slide. Thank you very much.